training module on how to write items if you'd like to learn how to do that later. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so one of the most, I know we're all about excitement and we want to bring you exciting things, and gosh, this is the most exciting thing we've done this year. And, woo! But we've actually been working on this for a year, and prior to development of this particular tool, we wrote during our committee members, I've been working with a training module on how to write items if you'd like to learn how to do that later. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so one of the most, I know we're all about excitement and we want to bring you exciting things, and gosh, this is the most exciting thing we've done this year. And, woo! But we've actually been working on this for a year, and prior to development of this particular tool, we wrote during our committee members, I've been working with NBCC since 1995 on various test committees. Rick Gazzard and I worked on the MAC, Master Addiction Counseling exam. I helped write with the NCB, the school counseling exam, et cetera, et cetera. I won't bore you with all that sort of stuff. But we actually wrote items at the end of the time, after we reviewed test forms, we would sit with Sean O'Brien and we'd actually write down the test items on a piece of paper and then hand in these test questions. And those would go into the item data bank. But the question is, we couldn't get enough of them fast enough to build a deep enough bank. So what if our item bank, what if the clinical exam is compromised? Let's say somebody goes into Pearson and starts, no offense here, and starts taking, they slip in with a pair of Google glasses and they start taking pictures, right, with their eyeglasses, and there goes all our items for the clinical exam. Well, what do you do with that? We need more items. So we set up another exam. We have different forms, but we have to have deeper, better quality items. This allows us to do that. I want to kind of take you through this because it's just a great tool, and I want to show it to you. I'm really excited. So. Okay, so when you first sign in to the ExamBank portal, this is item writing portal. Our item writers, we've already done this with one group 2 weeks ago. It's very successful, worked like a charm, okay? You have, first thing is, there's an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, okay? They can't, basically, I know you can't read all that, but basically it says you won't write items in Starbucks where people can look over your shoulder. You'll do this in a quiet place, you won't take photographs, you kind of get it. So once you click, you confirm it, and they have to do this every time they come in. Here comes my ugly mug, okay? So this is their side of the, this is the actual site. So I'm going to go down to the right-hand side, which gives my name, my actual role, which is item writer, reviewer in this particular thing. You may not be able to read that. Also has, oh, there's a thing on there, right? If I can get that. Which button do you push for the order? There you go. So this is shows a 5-year. People used to stay on our committees for in perpetuity, and now they have a 5-year period as an item writer, 5 years as item reviewers, and then they move on. And this shows how many, this keeps track of my time. Second piece, the other piece that I've got here is IP address, which tracks where you logged in. So if you're logging in all over the world in different places, we know that. I can ask you, where are you writing items? Are you in Starbucks where people can look over your shoulder? So we track the IP address. That's for security reasons. And then the last piece is that my curriculum vitae. I'm not going to open it up and bore you with all that jazz. But that's where we look at and assign people items based on what's in their curriculum vitae, okay? So if it's group, actually mine's, guess what, assessment. So I get assigned assessment items. If you scroll down, Tom. So we also have a progress bar, and the yellow ones show the items that I have been assigned that I'm actually working on, whether they're in draft, that they're actually being written to, they're under review by other members. I'll talk about that in just a second. And then the green area is, it's all go. My item has been developed, it's a field item, it'll go into testing to gather stats to determine if it's any good so it can go active. And then the last part is to determine whether the item has been rejected by my peers and colleagues. That's the hurtful part. NBCC since 1995 on various test committees. Rick Gazzard and I worked on the MAC, Master Addiction Counseling exam. I helped write with the NCE, the school counseling exam, et cetera, et cetera. I won't bore you with all that sort of stuff. But we actually wrote items at the end of the time, after we reviewed test forms, we would sit with Sean O'Brien and we'd actually write down the test items on a piece of paper and then hand in these test questions. And those would go into the item data bank. But the question is, we couldn't get enough of them fast enough to build a deep enough bank. So what if our item bank, what if the clinical exam is compromised? Let's say somebody goes into Pearson and starts, no offense here, Eric, and starts taking, they slip in with a pair of Google glasses and they start taking pictures, right, with their eyeglasses, and there goes all our items for the clinical exam. Well, what do you do with that? We need more items. So we set up another exam. We have different forms, but we have to have deeper, better quality items. This allows us to do that. And I want to kind of take you through this because it's just a great tool, and I want to show it to you. I'm really excited. Okay, so when you first sign in to the ExamBank portal, this is the item writing portal. Our item writers, we've already done this with one group 2 weeks ago. It's very successful, worked like a charm, okay? You have, first thing is there's an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, okay? They can't, basically, I know you can't read all that, but basically it says you won't write items in Starbucks where people can look over your shoulder. You'll do this in a quiet place, you won't take photographs, you kind of get it. So once you click, you confirm it, and they have to do this every time they come in. Here comes my ugly mug, okay? So this is their side of the, this is the actual site. So I'm going to go down to the right-hand side, which gives my name, my actual role, which is item writer, reviewer in this particular thing. You may not be able to read that. Also has, oh, there's a thing on there, right? If I can get that to work. Which button do you push for the order? There you go. So this is shows a 5-year. People used to stay on our committees for in perpetuity, and now they have a 5-year period as an item writer, 5 years as item reviewer, then they move on. And this shows how many, this keeps track of my time. Second piece, the other piece that I've got here is IP address, which tracks where you logged in. So if you're logging in all over the world in different places, we know that. I can ask you, where are you writing items? Are you in Starbucks where people can look over your shoulder? So we track the IP address. That's for security reasons. And then the last piece is that my curriculum vitae. I'm not going to open it up and bore you with all that, Jeff. But that's where we look at and assign people items based on what's in their curriculum vitae, okay? So if it's group, actually mine's, guess what, assessment. So I get assigned assessment items. If you scroll down, Tom. So we also have a progress bar, and the yellow ones show the items that I have been assigned that I'm actually working on, whether they're in draft, that they're actually being written to, they're under review by other members. I'll talk about that in just a second. And then the green area is, it's all go. My item has been developed, it's a field item, it'll go into testing to gather stats to determine if it's any good so it can go active. And then the last part is to determine whether the item has been rejected by my peers and colleagues. That's the hurtful part. NBCC since 1995 on various test committees. Rick Gazzard and I worked on the MAC, Master Addiction Counseling exam. I helped write with the NCE, the school counseling exam, et cetera, et cetera. I won't bore you with all that sort of stuff. But we actually wrote items at the end of the time, after we reviewed test forms, we would sit with Sean O'Brien and we'd actually write down the test items on a piece of paper and then hand in these test questions. And those would go into the item data bank. But the question is, we couldn't get enough of them fast enough to build a deep enough bank. So what if our item bank, what if the clinical exam is compromised? Let's say somebody goes into Pearson and starts, no offense here, Eric, and starts taking, they slip in with a pair of Google glasses and they start taking pictures, right, with their eyeglasses, and there goes all our items for the clinical exam. Well, what do you do with that? We need more items. So we set up another exam. We have different forms, but we have to have deeper, better quality items. This allows us to do that. I want to kind of take you through this because it's just a great tool, and I want to show it to you. I'm really excited. Okay, so when you first sign in to the ExamBank portal, this is the item writing portal. Our item writers, we've already done this with one group 2 weeks ago. It's very successful, worked like a charm, okay? You have, first thing is there's an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, okay? They can't, basically, I know you can't read all that, but basically it says you won't write items in Starbucks where people can look over your shoulder. You'll do this in a quiet place, you won't take photographs, you kind of get it. So once you click, you confirm it, and they have to do this every time they come in. Here comes my ugly mug, okay? So this is their side of this is the actual site. So I'm going to go down to the right-hand side, which gives my name, my actual role, which is item writer, reviewer in this particular thing. You may not be able to read that. Also has, there's a thing on there, right? If I can get that. Which button do you push for the order? There you go. So this is shows a 5-year. People used to stay on our committees for in perpetuity, and now they have a 5-year period as an item writer, 5 years as item reviewer, and then they move on. And this shows how many, this keeps track of my time. Second piece, the other piece that I've got here is this IP address, which tracks where you logged in. So if you're logging in all over the world in different places, we know that. I can ask you, where are you writing items? Are you in Starbucks where people can look over your shoulder? So we track the IP address. That's for security reasons. And then the last piece is that my curriculum vitae. I'm not going to open it up and bore you with all that, Jeff. But that's where we look at and assign people items based on what's in their curriculum vitae, okay? So if it's group, actually mine's, guess what? Assessment. So I get assigned assessment items. If you scroll down, Tom. So we also have a progress bar, and the yellow ones show the items that I have been assigned that I'm actually working on, whether they're in draft, that they're actually being written to, they're under review by other members. I'll talk about that in just a second. And then the green area is, it's all go. My item has been developed, it's a field item, it'll go into testing to gather stats to determine if it's any good so it can go active. And then the last part is to determine whether the item has been rejected by my peers and colleagues. That's the hurtful part. We get extra counseling for that part. And we go back to the middle, please, Tom. Go back up at the top. And you can click on the first item. I want to show you what it would look like if we were going to write an item. Okay, so right off the bat, I'm going to write to this particular domain: professional counseling, orientation, ethical practicing. Ethical practice, advocacy processes needed to address this. This is KCREP. This is not a work behavior. It's not a job analysis. This is the KCREP standards. So Rick, you can check me on this, Dr. Guzar and Carol Bob. So advocacy needed to address institutional and social barriers. If I decide this is just not, I got to assign this, I don't know that much about this particular thing, I can decline the item at no penalty. I mean, they're not going to take away my certification. Or I can actually create the item. If you click that, Tom. Okay, you'll scroll down just a little bit. We have a floating save button. So again, here's what I'm writing to. I'm trying to measure. I write a stem in number 1. I talked briefly about the stems in the item writing lesson we went over. I write a stem, and then I'm actually going to determine, I have to reference that stem. Where am I getting this information? So they have to select the textbook that they're actually going to cite. You close that back down, please. The page numbers, and then the rationale for why it's right. Why is that particular stem correct? Okay. In addition, they have to identify the cognitive levels and the knowledge level. So this is all Bloom's taxonomy. Don't want to bore you too much with it. But is it an item that's written just for simple recall? Who was the father of person-centered counseling? That was Ellis, right? No, it's Carl Rogers, right? So is that just a recall question? Remembering? Absolutely. Or it's understanding what person-centered counseling actually looks like, or the process of application, how you actually apply it. They have to identify this before they write the item. It's not post-op. Okay? I hope that makes some sense to you guys. Okay, so then they also have to check if it's a factual item, conceptual, or procedural. So if we're just checking facts, we're actually determining whether these folks are going through the steps when they apply it. So again, what we're trying to get to is high quality items. Take-home messages, this tool allows us to write items, guides the item writer through a process that shows them, guides them, forces them, if you will, through a process of writing quality items. They don't really get an option. So they can fill in their distractors. They also have to cite why the item is wrong. So it's not just like I showed you earlier, like 21 on the addition question, and I showed you why that was wrong. That was the addition So I will write that in here, okay? Once they fill this entire thing out, just scroll down all the way to the bottom, please, Tom. They can either save, come back to this later on as a draft question, or they can submit it for review. Now, here's the magic of this particular tool. The magic of this tool is, if we write items online, how do we know folks aren't going to just save it to their Word document and to their hard drive? Or take a picture with their phone? There's no way to do that, is there? Okay. Have some of you played the telephone game? Is it with kids? So some of you know that game. So I don't want to use the gossip thing, but you start out with, you call somebody on the telephone and you tell them a story. And then that person calls the next person to tell them the story. And pretty soon, the story that started out with, my dog ran away from home, turns out to my cat jumped in a tree and ate a bird. Okay? So this item that's originally written goes to a reviewer. The reviewer says these changes need to be made to this item. The comments go back to the original item writer, but another person rewrites the item. And this goes through several iterations so that the item, that the original item that's written never looks like what it started out as. Does this make sense to you? The distractors are changed. Sometimes the keys are changed. So we tested this out extensively. We have yet to find one. We've never had an item go through that started out as a perfect item. So for those of you that may have thought that, you know, everybody's born with a certain gift, just don't think there's too many people that are born when they grow up, they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be an item writer. It's not one of those kind of careers, right? So you go through this training and you get constant review on your items so that the final item is an item that the original person hasn't seen, the last reviewer who will sit for the form reviews will see. But that's that person. That's Kashana and I. Okay? Yeah. Any questions about this fantastic, wonderful item writing tool? Okay. If not, we'll continue on. These items go immediately. Once these items are approved to go active, they go into field testing. You guys know field testing? Field testers, they have to go through testing 3 times and generate statistics. Generate item stats that Shauna could talk to you about better, that show that the item is actually any good or not, that actually discriminates between people who should be doing counseling and people who should not be in the profession. High scores from low scores, okay? All right, you can close that out, Tom, and go back to the PowerPoint, if you would. Okay, I gotta click the thing again. Now, I want to talk to you about recruiting people and aligning their expertise to write quality items. I just got through talking to you about our item writing training that helps people, our new item writers, write quality items. I just finished with this last piece, which was how do we actually write items to create tests that keep the right ones in and the wrong ones out, right? And now I'm going to talk to you about how we refine our appeals process which is probably the thing that's most close to home for you. Okay? I deal with appeals every day. Tammy and I go through this every day. So I want to go through this with you in with some degree of specificity. We have handbooks for every exam, high-stakes exam that we use for licensure, okay? The NCE and the clinical. Were you guys aware of that? They're on your state websites on the MECC site. Are you aware of that? You may not be. Every person who registers to take the test is required to read the handbook prior to sitting to the test. Did you know that? Probably not. Did you know that everybody who registers to take a test in your state actually gets an email and says, I'm going to register for the NCE or the MHCE, and I have reviewed the handbook and I understand everything in it. Did you know that they click a box before they register for the test? They cannot register for the test until they click that box. Tammy Lee made me add that yesterday. So it's in, okay. So everybody who tests with us has to say, yes, I reviewed the handbook, or no, and then they can't register for the test. Everybody gets that now. So when they come to you and say, oh, I didn't know anything about this, nobody ever told me. Oh, yes, we did. Yes, we did. In fact, we do every day. So what's in this dadgum thing? Okay, so for your edification, I'm only going to cover the appeals part of it, not go through the entire handbook. So you can make, a test taker can appeal three things. Administration appeals, that's like the guy next to me is chewing his gum, is typing too loud on the keyboard, the woman next to me has too much perfume on, it's too hot in here, it's too cold in here, those kind of things. The screen turned purple, any administration type issues. Second, content. They believe an item on the test, even though we write quality items, and the committee says, yes, they're keyed correctly, they can actually challenge the content on the exam. There is a process outlined in our handbooks for them to actually challenge the content of the test, if they want, if they so choose to do so. I won't go through that. You can read it at your leisure. Just know that it's in there. The third part is accommodations appeals. So if they were granted accommodations for a particular learning disability, or they have vision issues with vision, and they need somebody to enlarge print, they need a reader, they need a separate room so they can pay more attention, they don't need any distractions whatsoever, we make those accommodations, okay? They can even appeal that and say, my accommodations weren't met, and we actually look into each one of these areas, okay? So what I've circled here in red is that the administration appeals, they have this first part here is they have, once they file it, they have 60 days, because I work closely with Eric's group with Pearson View to pull data to determine if that administration appeal is actually valid or not. So, and I'm going to give you some examples at the end, but the point I want to make sure that you understand is when we make decisions, they're based on facts. They're not based on decisions, judgments about what I know about the test or the test administration, what it's like in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I actually get an incident report from Pearson Proctors. And Eric can talk to you about the cameras that are in the room, and the security in the room, by which we make sure that the administration areas either happened or they didn't happen, okay? So this is a collaboration that it takes us about 60 days to iron all this stuff out, and then we make a decision on their appeal claim. The other thing that you need to know is when the folks, test takers are on site, if they have an issue, they're required to submit an incident report. So you're sitting for an exam and your keyboard or the stops working, or the person next to you has on gobs of perfume and is talking to themselves as they take the test, and that's distracting you. If you create an incident report, it allows the proctor to come over and make adjustments, move you to another workstation, adjust your monitor if it needs be. If you don't, if your test taker doesn't file that incident report, we have no way of tracking that any error took place. In fact, they fill out a form at the end that says, do you have any complaints about the test? No. Until they find out what? Until they failed the test. So I have to go back and make absolutely, perfectly sure that nothing actually happened. All right? So they must file that incident report with us. Okay. This accommodations review panel is something that we have created at CCE. I'm going to let Dr. Askew talk about that, but we'll get to that in just a second. I want to go back through and talk to you more about what's in the book related to things that are appealable and things that are not appealable. So when they file an appeal, they have 7 days to file an appeal with us. Okay. And once they file the appeal, I ask them for the incident report. Once I have the incident report, I open that up with Pearson View and we begin the process. And actually, if individuals say, I think my exam was scored incorrectly, we actually conduct what's called, and Eric can talk to you about this in more detail, a digital audit exam. Okay? Which it goes mouse click by mouse click by mouse click by mouse click. And I get that log that shows that their scores were actually scored correctly, they selected what they selected, and how it was scored. So their appeals must be sent to me via the email, and then here are the things that cannot be appealed. And please don't giggle about this. This is true stuff. And folks just don't know. Okay, so they can't appeal if they are screens, because some of the test material doesn't appear on the screen. You have to scroll down to get all the tests. You can't appeal that. So if you choose not to scroll down the entire screen, even though you get a prompt, you can't appeal that piece. If you have test anxiety, you can't appeal it unless you have an accommodation. I was really anxious because the lights flickered. You're late for the test. Or I just didn't follow the instructions about where to click for, we actually have a tutorial about how to select A, B, or C. I didn't know that we were supposed to click the radio buttons. Okay. So anyway, if you have any questions, we have a roundtable discussion. I'll talk to you about appeals all day long tomorrow. So here are some of the sample appeals that we have, okay, again. And these are in your brochures, in your handbooks that you got. I failed the test because the camera failed. The battery's on the camera. Let me make sure that you guys understand. If they're the clinical exam, they're given 4 hours to take the NCE and 3 hours to take the clinical exam. If the camera, if the batteries go dead, they don't start the test when they start taking pictures. Okay. I'm just putting these in so you guys can understand what kind of appeals I get. Reading instructions robbed me of time on the test. No, it doesn't. Average time to complete the NCE, which is a 4-hour test is less than 3 hours. Okay? The average time to complete the clinical exam, which is a 3-hour test, is just over 2 hours. Okay? The exam started late, so there were a bunch of people in the room, and I didn't get registered in on time. So they started my appointment's at 9, and they started me at 9:10. Well, it should, if you look in your brochure, you'll see that it indeed started at 9:10, but they got 3 hours to take the test. They got the full time. There was a power outage. Now, this is something you may not know, but when we have a power outage at one of the testing centers, it saves, and Eric can talk more about this later, it saves the test exactly where the test taker left off. All the information they need is right there.